Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is Ukraine War Update Extra video, but it's an extra today because I had the pleasure of being joined by someone who is in presently Ukraine at the moment, Valeriya, I probably pronounced it incorrectly, Quinn, who is, I believe, married to one of the viewers of my channel. So it's fantastic. Thank you for putting us in contact. Thank you for coming onto the channel.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure for me to be here today.
Excellent. Do you want to give us some background as to who you are, where you're from, before we get into kind of what you're doing right now?
Absolutely. So my name is Valeriya Quinn. Um, I was born and raised in Ukraine, and 19 years ago, met my husband, got married, and moved to United States, and had a great adventure of living in Alaska, Guam, and then later, when my husband joined State Department, we spent 12 years living and working overseas in Poland, Italy, Turkmenistan, and of course, United States. So a few years ago, my husband retired, to be exact, about 3 years ago. We decided to take a break. I decided to take a break from employment as well. So we traveled a little, and we had a chance to spend a summer in Ukraine. And my husband said, "Oh, it's so great. Let's spend our summers in Ukraine." So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we bought a summer house, and we spent the summer in Ukraine and winter in Mexico, in Baja California. And that's it. And when the war started in Ukraine last year, I was in Mexico, in the peaceful, beautiful Baja.
Wow. So are you in Poltava at the moment?
Yes, I'm in Poltava, in my hometown, in the central eastern part of Ukraine, about 90 kilometers away from Kharkiv, to be exact. And here I am working. I'm a director of charitable organization here, and I'm just doing my best to do what I can to help Ukrainians.
Excellent. And we'll come on to your charity work and the important work you're doing there. Just want to sort of rewind, if you don't mind, to get a sense of how you understood the war as it started and what your feelings were as a Ukrainian. So, what were your views on Russia prior to the war just breaking out, possibly with a view to what's happened since 2014? How did you feel about the political situation prior to the war?
So I will start here. Just
Hmm.
You have to understand, I was a Russian-speaking Ukrainian.
Hmm.
You know, my mom was from northern Russia. My father's mom was from Russia, and of course I was Ukrainian. I was like, of course I was speaking Ukrainian before I left, and but Russian was my uh, home language. And I'm from Poltava, where a few years ago 80% of population were speaking only Ukrainian. I graduated high school in 1991. I was growing up in USSR, you know, and I was in Pioneer. I was a member of Komsomol, and it's all ended in 1991 when I finished high school. I went to get a university degree, and there were no books in Ukrainian in university at that time, so I had uh, prepare my tests, and you know, with a dictionary sometimes. But anyway, uh so Russia, I was joking to my American friends many times that I'm before the war in Ukraine, that I was so proud that I have a mixture of cultures in me, that I have a mixture of Ukrainian and Russian culture. Otherwise it's so boring, you know, and square. uh, so and maybe 20 something years ago, my husband and I took our youngest daughters to Moscow and St. Petersburg for a little vacation, to show the art, to show mausoleum. And we were fond of Russian culture and a little bit fascinated. My husband as well as a retired military, and later when we worked for State Department, where we were living overseas, I wasn't really paying much attention to the small conflicts as I was thinking. Happening between Ukraine and Russia. And in 2014, we were in Rome working, and I was watching news and thinking, all I was thinking about the Maidan and when Russia, took Crimea off. I was thinking, wow, it's not really happening, because my husband and I, we made a few trips to Crimea. To be exact, maybe 4 trips. 4 times we drove to Crimea before 2014, just to enjoy the sea and have some sunshine. And I remember speaking to various Crimean citizens, and they were telling us, we're so proud to be Crimeans. We don't want to be Russian or Ukrainian. We want to be we would like to be a autonomy republic, a parliamentary republic, like they were before the war. And that was few years before last year. Everything was happening, wasn't really affecting me or my family or friends. So it didn't stop us to moving in the summertime to Ukraine. The war didn't stop us. It was
Right.
relatively we traveled around. We even drove to Berdyansk 3 years ago with our friends from France. I just can't believe we were there 3 years ago, and now it's just shock. And
So there was a kind of acceptance of what Russia had done in annexing both parts of the Donbass and Crimea. Did you, I mean, with family yourself, family connections to Russia, and before we even get to the 22 iteration of the war, that 2014 onwards, did that cause any tension with you and your family? How did you see Russia in different eyes from 2014 onwards?
I did. I wasn't spending much time in Ukraine back then. That's why I was not getting too much information, only from news, and that's it. And um, I had mixed feelings about Crimea and about Donbass and Donetsk and Lugansk regions, because as far as I know, Ukraine did not have any borders. I know people who lived in those areas and in their homes and working in Russia, going to work in Russia without crossing, without any passport control or anything, And I guess it was a little, not a big weakness of Ukraine. And I don't know. It's very complicated issue, and very. It didn't affect me or my family. I know there is some dark areas in political areas and with previous president, and how can president get richer during the war, with his business in Russia. So I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't really try to get much information. Of course, when friends and family in United States were asking me, okay, you went to Ukraine for 1 week, or what's going on there? And I said, well, I did my best. I tried to use public transportation. I tried to hear what people are talking in, local people are talking about. And
Yeah.
it was slightly different picture from what I've seen overseas, but still it wasn't a big deal as far as I remember. Of course, I knew there are fights there. I knew that some people were dying, but I met people who said, the war started, we moved away, we left everything, we started new life, we started new business, and that's it. And I met people who left Donetsk and went to Crimea. It's just complicated. And then they left and went to Kharkov region, and they lost everything there in Kharkov. It's just complicated, but yet I wasn't shocked, and I couldn't believe it could be possible. And up to last moment when it happened a year ago. So, and I know there are so many warnings, my
Mm.
children calling me and telling me, Mom, get home. Because in January of last year, I was still in Ukraine getting my back treatment in a hospital, local hospital here. And my daughter called me and said, Mom, what are you still doing there? It was January of last year. Come immediately. And I said,
And this is that situation where the US and UK intelligence were quite accurate by all accounts in predicting that the Russians would attack, and the Ukrainian government and many other allies were like, yeah, no, I don't think they will. That'd be crazy. And then they actually did, and then so that's your experience there as well. So that changed everything. Obviously, this is a full scale invasion. How did you feel then? What were you were you in Ukraine at the time they invaded in February? How did you feel? And also, how did people in Russia interpret this? Because we hear a lot of stories about people not believing what the Russians were doing, and not believing their own family members when they're making claims about this. So I don't know if you had any experience of that.
so when last year in February, I was in Mexico enjoying sunshine and painting a big painting, and uh, I had that sense of something is about to happen, but I was in complete denial. So does my husband, but we were almost watching news all the time. And I still remember I couldn't finish painting because I wasn't in a mood, but I had the feeling I have to do it because I won't have time later. I don't know why. And in a few hours, my husband says the war, and I wasn't shocked. I was in shock and fear. And I was just, am I sleeping? Is it really happening? And of course, I was worried about my family, my parents, my sister. And I was so shocked. I was, of course, in occasional tears. And instead of, going for a long walk with my dog, I was just hiding because all my neighbors were outside and asking, so how is that? How is there? What's going on? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. And I can't really respond, and I can't really react. And when the end of last day of February, I jumped on a plane and I flew to Poland, to Warsaw, to be closer. And I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat or sleep or do anything. And I didn't know what could I possibly do. Can I go there? Should I wait? So I was volunteering from day one in Western train station in Warsaw every day, 10, 12 hours for a little bit more than a month of March. And
Wow.
I don't have friends, close friends, or anyone or relatives in Russia, but I don't know. My godfather, whom I haven't seen for almost 40 years, he is in Moscow, and he called my parents and he said, don't believe the news. It was already 1 week of full invasion, and he called my mom to say happy birthday and said, don't believe the news. It's not Kharkov being bombed, it's Syria or something. It's your government lying to you, and your terrible president too. And my parents were so upset, and it just
It's such a common thing, and particularly at that point in the war, there were so many stories about people who had relatives in Russia just outright denying the actual experiences of their own family members. It's not like don't believe the news. It's like some of the family members are saying, "Yeah, our neighborhood has been bombed," and they'll be telling their relatives in Russia, and those Russian relatives will be going, "No, no, it hasn't." It's like, "No, I've literally experienced this." So there's this disconnect and this kind of loyalty to the Russian government, to the state narrative, to the TV stations that's not just been feeding them at that point, but for the last 25 years of their lives. And then, you build up an idea of what Russia is if you're living there. And then if this activity goes against what you believe of Russia, then it makes your brain just go, and someone's got to be wrong. Either your entire belief about either you're wrong about your entire belief about your nation, or your relatives are just wrong. So sometimes it's easy to just say, "Oh, my relatives are wrong." I get that's how I'd interpret it.
Yes.
So, given given that you're in Poland now, you say you a month of volunteering there. What were you experiencing there? What were you seeing of people? Was it how did it make you feel?
Well, first of all, I gained my sleep back, you know, because and you know, I it was such an incredible experience, unforgettable experience, and I would say the most valuable experience in my life. You know, we were at the first few days of the invasion. In the train station, which the only point where Ukrainians refugees were coming to entering Warsaw from the train, and they were coming out with children, pets, you know, no suitcases or just one suitcase, and we were providing them food, clothing, and later on some assistance with accommodation. You know, it was a little bit disorganized. Polish Ukrainian group of volunteers, which a month later, with the help of the mayor of Warsaw, got more organized, you know. And at some point, when I realized that I can't really sit in the office and be in charge of distributing warm clothing or something, or diapers, I have to go back. I have to go back to Ukraine. I have to go see with my own eyes what's happening there and who need help here. And my, you know, I was just at some point I realized I have to take my parents out, and I drove my parents to Poland, to Warsaw, and they're still there. My dad is disabled; he can't walk. It was
Right.
very difficult. It was very complicated drive, you know. But we did it, and later on, I made about 5 or 6 more trips with humanitarian aid, with cars and trucks and buses, and we were taking refugees who were coming from different parts of Ukraine to Poltava, and we were taking them to the border. With the help of our friends in Italy, Italian and Polish friends will pick them up at the border and find them accommodation in the northern part of Italy. So we did this too, you know, and we're bringing back humanitarian aid. So this is how it
Was this
started. I
was
can't
this
go.
for a company? Was this for a charity? Sorry, that was this for the same charity that you're affiliated with now?
It was completely unorganized. We did it just because we want to help, and we
Just
realized
off your own back, right?
and we realized that we have to legalize ourselves in order to receive donations. This is how it started. So many, you know, in so many years with my husband traveling and living around the world, we had so many friends who reach out to me, to us, and said, "How can we help? How can we donate?" And I can't, you know, I can't trust anyone, honestly.
Mm.
And we tried to help a few people, and then I realized that I need to do. I can't be responsible for all the funds, you know, and I have to legalize. So a friend of mine from Kharkov said, let's open an organization, and we did it, and we opened together an organization, legalized it in 1 week, and we're working just with this organization. But at some point, my friend said, I would like to help only Kharkov region, and I said, I don't like this. You know, I can't say no to others, so we split, and now it's just me and a few volunteers, and that's it. That's country.
So sorry, you cut out just there for me. So what's the name of the organization?
Country of Peace.
So Country of Peace, and here's the Instagram page. The website's just down for maintenance at the moment, but I'll put that back up after I record this. So Country of Peace, what is it that you do? How did you go about working out what you should do? How many people do you have working with you? Talk to us a little bit about Country of Peace.
So it's just me, director of this organization, and a few volunteers. I have about six active volunteers, and we all volunteers. We don't get paid. We receive donations through various sources from our friends. Most of our donors are foreigners, not Ukrainians. About maybe 10%. Maybe less we receive from Ukrainian citizens. But so we carried out various projects to support our refugees, wounded soldiers here locally in Poltava. We helped to deliver dozens of tons of humanitarian aid to war victims from different regions. We helped to deliver medical supplies together with our international friends from Italy, from Germany. So medical supplies to the military hospitals here in Poltava. We're helping members of territorial defense units here, and they are helping us to distribute, let's say, warm clothing to the Ukrainian citizens in the newly freed territories. For example, they've been twice in Kupiansk a few months ago with hundreds of kilos of warm clothing and blankets and food from Country of Peace. So we're not going there. We ask them, and they deliver those products to the most in need.
So obviously, these sort of places like Kupiansk that are right on the front line or very close to the front line, you're not going to be able to get deliveries of all sorts of, commercial deliveries of anything really is not going to be freely passing through some of these regions, and especially if it's behind the Russian lines and then subsequently liberated. These places are, I presume, have very particular needs. And how do you know what people want or what people need?
So I have to add a few things. So in the past few months, we focused mostly strictly on so-called targeted assistance. So various people write to us through social media, through Instagram and Facebook, and they ask for assistance. So people from different regions of Ukraine, refugees who live in Western Ukraine or any other cities. So what we ask from them, I think it's maybe it's old-fashioned, but I do like this idea. They write handwritten letters to us. I ask, write about yourself, who you are, where you're from, why in the difficult situation, and what exactly do you need and why. And if we see that this is the right family or the right person, we ask for additional documentation like proof of the refugee status or disability or doctor's prescription and passports, etc. So and we use two postal services, the Ukrainian postal service, which is really great because it delivers mail sometimes to the occupied zones. I don't know how the magic
Wow.
2 weeks and I get the cryptic message, we got it, or some sort of picture. And also we use Ukrainians private express delivery called Novaya Pochta, which is really fast, and so it delivers packages also to some regions outside of very close to the war zone. So but Ukrainian postal service, official one, is not working during the airstrike sirens.
Right.
And sometimes we have 6 or 7 or 8 of them all day, so we can't work. And Ukrainian express delivery, the private ones, also have some sort of problems. We can't work in the past few days because their system is down. So those are some of the challenges we have.
And I suppose, yeah, things like systems being down, I guess, I'm victim to this, which is reporting all the kind of the war zones and what's going on here and there. But actually, there are different types of war going on, and one of them is cyber warfare, where systems get hacked, and I assume that Ukrainian systems are target number one for the
Yeah.
Russians. So that would be your infrastructure. How Ukraine is able to continue operating as a civil society in light of all these attacks is quite remarkable, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's really good that you're verifying that people really genuinely are in need, because there are always going to be those who want to take advantages of situations like this, exploit situations like this to their benefit. But it's really good that you're saying no, you need to genuinely show us your need. And so are you saying that you are also helping families right throughout the country, or predominantly near the front lines?
Yes, absolutely. I know some people say that as a charitable organization you should select specific category. I just can't do it. We are not ready to do it. I'm right here, and I see that there are local retired people who so much affected by this war. A few months ago I saw my high school teacher going through the dumpster, and I said, how
Really?
was just on the refugees
Wow.
or certain categories, or just disabled, or people with 5+ children. So we try as much as we can to help all categories. And sometimes we receive a request from one or two volunteers which are responsible for an entire village or something. In the last few weeks we were helping a few villages in Kharkov, in the pre-war zone territories, and they said we don't need food. Like, we have water, we have volunteers who deliver certain supplies, but they need specific, like, diaper or certain medication or just chocolate or a toy. And I had this opportunity to deliver several boxes of toys. Why not?
Yeah. And that's really good, because then you're targeting that really what people need, because there were these stories of at the beginning of the war particularly, and this happened in the UK, where everyone's like, right, quick, box up every bit of stuff that you don't need, right? And loads of people, really well-meaning people, sending crate loads of stuff to Poland, effectively, and then that just getting left there because no one quite knew what to do with it. It was such a range of things, and it wasn't necessarily what everyone needed. Whereas you're literally getting requests from people that need stuff, and you can then say, right, we are going to provide exactly what they need. I guess that's a much better way of doing it.
Yes, yes, and I had this experience in Poland too. I've met so many people who British citizens and local Polish citizens who were coming to us at the train station, talking to me and say, "Okay, tomorrow, what should we bring tomorrow?" And I said, "Okay, hairbrushes, underwear, and diapers. We don't need anything else. And that was so valuable when our potential helpers, sponsors were reaching out and saying, what can we bring today? I said, PJs only, please. We don't need high heels and fur coats.
Yeah, yeah. But I heard stories as well, even with medical supplies, that there were agencies that were just getting a load of medical supplies that just happened to be not quite the right medical supplies, and so there were just hordes of medical, drugs and whatnot going out of date because actually it wasn't quite what was needed, and this is being provided. You hear these different stories, so I guess when you're providing things that people definitely want, then that's going to be used.
Yeah,
Um, so
yeah.
with regard to the range of things you provide, is it pretty much anything then?
It's anything which could be mail. It's babies' food and diapers and essentials and laundry detergents and just basic things and of course food items. And we do have families which we know well already, and we continuously helping, monthly helping. We selective, not very selective, but we know that people write to us little reports about how their life improved. They received a small package, and they're with books and notes, and they're just excited and happy. And sometimes I couldn't do work because I receive hundreds of messages, thank you messages, or happy St. Nicholas Day today messages, for example. And it's nice. It's very inspiring.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess this is, if you thought about where your life would be a couple of years ago, you wouldn't have for a moment
No,
expected to you were looking forward to being on a beach painting in Mexico rather than doing this. But do you, is this changed your life in any meaningful ways? Do you reflect on this, and are you seeing the value of this not to other people, but has it changed you in any way?
absolutely. It's changed me a lot. It's of course affected my family. Um, my husband, in certain point, he is trying to be more useful, and I hope when it will be over, he will be joining me here, or we will do uh, something else, or do something together. But it's just I can't, every 2 months I'm going back to Mexico. I'm kissing my dog. I'm seeing my children who already adults. We have 4 children, and they're happy in their grown up life. But I just can't, I like this extreme I'm living in right now. And it's really something what I'm happy with at this point of my life, and I'm so grateful that I have those, that my family supports me, my friends, and my true friends, volunteers, you know.
Yeah.
And
So, what are the biggest challenges for you and your charity, do you think?
well, challenges are various, and they depend on a different time of the year and different situation in the war zone. For example, a year ago, when we had the biggest turnover of humanitarian aid coming from Europe, we had a fuel crisis. We had money, we could pay, we have tons of humanitarian aid at the border. We can bring it, we can find fuel. And then when we got it, the prices went high, so high that the humanitarian aid became golden, and
Right.
no point to bring anything if it's so expensive, and then I had a we had a storage, and we couldn't reach the storage. We had no power, and it was during the coldest winter month. We can't go there and work there, and so it complicated at certain point. Right now, the only challenge is finance.
Yeah.
Like people, I know how many people are tired overseas. Just to look at the news, but people are dying, and
Yeah.
Ukraine is resistant, and um, it's just difficult to to stay away. How can you stay away? The people need assistance every day. And
What
I
what are the areas that you think what are the areas that most need your assistance? Where are you targeting at the moment? You've talked a lot about Kharkiv. Are the frontline areas, or is it just everyone anywhere?
uh, frontline, not really, because mostly citizens living closer to the front line.
Yeah.
The families who haven't moved, most of them, um, they have decided they can move. Some of them have relatives, elderly, who not just not willing, they can't physically move. Like I was lucky, I moved my father, who is, and I had a friend who helped us in the border at the border, but it's just complicated to, and
Yeah, I've heard a lot about this. So some people are saying that the most, almost always, the people who remain in areas where you think, well, why are you still living there? I mean, there's still a few people in Bakhmut that I've seen recently, but it turns out that generally the last people to move are the people the most vulnerable. So you're elderly that, as you say, physically can't move. You may be disabled, maybe have mental health problems, have no relatives to rely on. All these kind of more vulnerable people are the people who are most in need of assistance and the most unable to move out of these war zones. Is that what your experience is then?
absolutely, absolutely. And I have to mention there is another category of people. There are people who actually came back, not necessarily to areas like Bakhmut, but people who came back, or people who, or younger generation who couldn't find themselves overseas, and they came back to certain areas, and they talked to those people, and they said, we no longer want it at some places in overseas in Europe. They pay enough to survive. I couldn't find a job. I don't speak the language, and they think if I'm that old, if the young person cannot survive there, why would I go? If it's another aspect that
Interesting.
it's became different and difficult for. I see my parents, they're still in Poland, and it's difficult and complicated. Poland has more Ukrainians than any other European
Yeah.
country, and they're all tired.
Yeah, yeah, very challenging indeed. So, with the volunteers that you have working for you, are they all Ukrainian volunteers?
Yes, Ukrainian volunteers locally. I have an American volunteers who helps me with some media projects, and she's in Singapore working for Facebook and Instagram. I have a few volunteers back in Mexico. So people who are trying to do a little bit of networking, and just because they want to. And there's quite a few people who are genuine, and they really, really want to help Ukrainian citizen, and in any possible way. I have a friend in Mexico who, every time I'm there, she tried to organize any sort of charitable event in her store, or collect money in some kind of auction, or so it's very nice to have people around the world, new friends I've met, and I'm just so happy that I have those valuable people in my life.
Oh, brilliant! And obviously, I'll put all the links up and to how people can help you, where to go. Obviously, your website, Facebook, Instagram, where you have a presence. But talking about the war itself, as we come to a sort of close, how do you think the war will end? Are you confident that it will? How confident are you in Ukraine, in your government, in your people? To bring this to a satisfactory conclusion?
Absolute victory. I'm absolutely certain. I have no single doubt about this, and there is no any other way. And there's no any. The only way to peace is Ukrainian victory, and the we need to stop the war, and it will be stopped. The war will be over, and Ukraine must win in order to stop the aggression, stop the potential aggressors in the future. To we have to gain security and prosperity back, and just for democracy, we have to win it for democracy. Ukraine have to win, and will win. And of course, the idea is to get all territories back. I don't know, but I know maybe one day it will be
I mean,
possible.
that's the challenge, isn't it? So when you've got Russia who have shipped in a number of, I mean, a large number of actual Russian citizens into Crimea, into the Donbass, so it appears that these areas are far more pro-Russian. I mean, it's a kind of artificial sense of, you know, what these regions are. I mean, how do you feel about Donbass and Crimea going forward? Is that do you think that Ukraine
I,
has to take all of those territories back? Do you think they will? And how do they deal with that issue?
I'm not an expert. However, I have a I'm confident that one day, I don't know when, but one day, those territories will be back. I'm living here right now, and I hear all kinds of I can't say rumors. Some information I believe is true. I hear about the life in Crimea, about um, deportations, about Ukrainian passports being confiscated and forced to be replaced with some certain Russian documentation. I know about the food crisis and the inflation and the prices. Some people say went up to 65% high. And as of a few days ago, I've heard that there's no sugar. I mean, we went through this crisis here too. But Poltava is not that isolated as Crimea, and I know that some people, maybe there will, maybe some people in Crimea and some areas of Donbass, I think in Crimea more, they were feeling that they probably will be okay with Russia, but I don't think so. I think this number will change, and I mean,
What?
the people think so because of the lack of the information. They don't have
Yeah.
news. They block. They live in this Russian propaganda bubble, and they will come out at some point. So that's like my father, my godfather. A few months ago, he sent me a tiny cryptic message. I'm so proud of you. Keep doing what you do.
Really?
Yes. So
Wow. Okay, so there's a bit of a change there then, and
I
he's hopefully got hold of more objective information, perhaps. Interesting.
Yeah, so I think the all things that are happening right now in those occupied territories is the pressure, is the harassment, and the lack of information. And desperate people are, they're desperate. They have to eat, survive. They have to feed their kids, and uh, I I personally believe that one day it, all territories will be back. It might take a little bit longer than actual peace, and
Mm,
the end of the war. We'll
yes.
see.
Well, that's everything I would hope for sure. Look, thank you so much for your time here. It's an interesting one, this, because so often, and I've wondered this myself, there are so many charities and so many people appealing for things. I mean, I spend a lot of time on the social media on places like Twitter, where I'm following maybe different army units or different people affiliated with them saying we need drones, we need this, and people raising money. And then you're thinking, do I want to raise money for military stuff? But then if the military don't succeed, then all the other stuff is kind of irrelevant. But do I feel uncomfortable about giving my money to charities that are providing military hardware or stuff, or is it better to go down a humanitarian aid? And of course everything's important, but also wondering, like, is this money definitely getting to the end users? Is this being well spent? Is this a reputable um, charity? And so it's really interesting to talk to yourself where there's that connection, right? You are a real person and you are doing I assume that you're doing what you say you're doing, and that you have your websites and your social media and your volunteers and these people thanking you. And so hopefully for the viewers of this, you get a sense of, here's a bona fide charity and I would ask all the viewers to help you if at all possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure for me, and um, I think you're doing a great job. I want to thank you for
Oh, thank you.
my husband introduced you, stream your work, and it's so valuable, it's so interesting, and I can't be more thankful that people like you exist and giving the true information to the world.
Oh, thank you. No, that means a lot, and you know, all the very best to you, and it'll be. I just hope that people watching this will be able to help out your charity. I know I'm going to look into doing that myself, and people like you know, make things happen. You are someone who has said, right, I'm going to do something, gone to Poland to say, right, I'm going to help these people, and then said, right, this is not the best way at the moment for me to be able to help. I need to do this, and then I need to then do this, and you've developed that into now running your own charity, and that's just an amazing accomplishment. So, you know, heartfelt congratulations for what it's worth from some random guy in the UK. But you know,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
okay, well, look, now over. I'm just going to say, I am pre-recording this with Valeria. So for those of you who are watching who want to be able to contribute to Valeria's charity, all the details are in the description below, and probably flashing up on the screen right now. Please, you know, do what you can to help her work, and thank you to her husband Michael for putting us in touch and for following the channel as well, and being supportive. So look, there are so many charities out there. Why? Because there's so much need for this work to take place, and we must keep cognizant of the war that's going on in Ukraine and of the needs of the people of Ukraine, because they are experiencing stuff so that we don't have to, and they are fighting a war on behalf of you know, democratic values, on behalf of you know, the West, of allies, of whatever you want to call the countries supporting Ukraine, so that, you know, we must support Ukraine as much as we can. Anyway, thanks again, Valeria, and thank you very much to the viewers.
Thank you.